welcome back to my channel. Good to see you. Good to have you here. My name is Demina Malord. I am a licensed mental health counselor, an anxiety and fear relief coach, and also an individual who is passionate about growing within self and sharing the knowledge. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, so glad to have you in this safe space. If you've been here before, then welcome back. Glad to have you. Just really looking forward to share about today's video. So just to dig into things, I have been working on a series called Overcoming Guilt. And I have already shared part 1 and part 2 of the video. In part 1, I talk about and ask the question, can you stop feeling guilty? Which is such an important one. I encourage you to take a look at it. And then in the second video, I share 3 tips to help manage the feeling and the emotion of guilt in a creative and in an open-minded way. So today, just to share part 3 of the video, I wanted to talk about 3 realistic and doable tips to decrease automatic negative self-talk. So self-talk is essentially conversation that we have with ourselves, right? So as we're going through our days, as we are just going through work or school, just family life, anything, right? We're constantly seeing things. We are in traffic, we are walking, we are working out, we are watching TV, right? We're interacting with so many people. Sometimes we're interacting with pets too. And really what happens is that in all of these interactions that we have internal commentary, right? Sometimes this internal commentary is a little bit more present for some people than for others. And the best way that I would describe it, and this kind of shows my age a little bit, but that's all right, I'm proud. I'm thinking of DVDs, and I'm thinking of when I would put a DVD in the DVD player. And when it would load, it would give me the options to play the movie trailer, and there would be times when it would give me the option to play the movie with director commentary, right? So essentially, the movie is playing while the director is sharing their thoughts on the different parts of the movie. And it's funny because I never ever watched a movie with the director commentary, just because I thought, I don't want to hear what the director is saying. I just want to focus on the movie. Which I want to say that what can happen is, as we are having this internal commentary with ourselves, right? Depending on what we're seeing and what we experience. So let's say, for example, if you go to Target and you see some awesome things on clearance, and in your mind, you might think, yes, clearance, right? Or maybe you go to a store, I don't know, I'm thinking Bath and Body Works, right? Like, for those of you that, I know some people might be allergic, but for those of you that are really, you really enjoy the sense of smell, right? If you walk into a store like Bath and Body Works, it's like, I feel so happy right now, right? Because there are so many scents and so many things that you're seeing as well. And so also, just give another quick example is if we are traveling to and from work, right? Maybe you're using public trams, maybe you're driving, and essentially what's going to happen is that, right, in the way that you are traveling, other people are traveling as well. And so maybe somebody cuts you off, maybe somebody takes your seat. In your mind, you might be thinking, oh, I'm so frustrated, I can't stand that person. I'm so tired, I didn't even want to get up today, right? So the reality is that we have internal commentary all the time. And so in the same way that with the example that I used a little earlier, is that there are times when that internal commentary can be just fine, doesn't get in our way. Maybe it might even enhance a moment, right? Or maybe we might be able to kind of quiet that internal commentary by super duper focusing on what it is that we are trying to focus on. And then there are times when the internal commentary can really just grind and get under our skin and really affect us in a way that just can really ruin our day or ruin an experience, right? And so that is part of the reason why I wanted to share 3 doable tips, right? To decrease automatic negative self-talk. So negative self-talk essentially is commentary that people will say to themselves. And there are times when it can truly be automatic, almost habitual, right? So maybe for you in the morning, maybe you have some kind of a routine throughout the day, right? Maybe you eat lunch or breakfast or dinner at a certain time, and that's just kind of how your day goes. Or maybe when you get up in the morning, you have a very specific routine. Maybe you make your bed and then you use the bathroom and then you brush your teeth and then you take the shower. I think you're kind of catching my drift here. Essentially, what can happen is that self-talk and that internal commentary can be just as habitual as any other habits that we have. And the reality is that there are times when that internal commentary, that self-talk that we have, can be negative and essentially really cause our behaviors and our actions to go down a certain path because of what is being said in the negative self-talk. So in today's video, I really wanted to use an example just to help us kind of go through this and to incorporate the different tips. So the example that I'm using is when, let's say, you are putting more boundaries in place with your family by not being on call, okay? And not, how would I say, like you not being on call, maybe like you're used to being, right? Maybe, again, if we're using the word habit, maybe you have a habit of always being there for your family. Excuse me, maybe when they call, you're always picking up on the first or the second ring. Maybe if there's a text message, you're always there. Maybe if you are, if they're asking for something, you're always giving it time, money, resources, right? And essentially what can happen a lot is that sharing and giving and giving and giving so much can sometimes really cause burnout. Some of you may be familiar with that term. It's typically used in a professional setting, right? Like, oh, I'm just burned out from work. I need to have some days off. But essentially we can become burned out from a lot of different people, places, or things, right? And so that's why I wanted to use this particular example. So again, you're putting more boundaries in place with your family so that you're not on call like you're used to being. Let's say a situation happens where a family member contacts you. Let's say they call you first. They call you, right? You see that they're calling, but let's say you're in the middle of something, right? Let's say you are at an event with some friends, right? You put it in your calendar, you planned it out, you did everything that you were supposed to do, or just you did all the things to make sure that it was a smooth process and you're there, right? You're hanging out with your friends, you're having a good time. You see a call from the family member. Then, okay, so you think, okay, well, I don't want to pick that up. I'm trying to really put my boundaries in place, but maybe you're feeling kind of like anxious or worried or just kind of a little like keyed up, but you don't pick up the phone. Then let's say they send you a text message, and the text message says something like, "Hey, are you busy?" Right? So in the text message, it's not like they're telling you, "Hey, I'm just reaching you because of this, this, and this. Let me know when you have the opportunity." But they just ask, "Hey, are you busy?" Right? And maybe that question might cause you to think, "Oh my gosh, like, what do I say? How do I respond to this? What if they need me? Is it an emergency? I don't know. I'm at this event, man," right? Like it totally takes you away from being present in the moment with your friends at this event that you planned out, right? And so let's say you decide to say to the family member, "Hey, I'm not free right now, but I'll call you back in a couple of hours when I'm available." Let's say the family member doesn't respond back to you. Let's say you have read receipts on, and let's say you see that they read the message, but they just didn't respond back to you. That could potentially leave you in a place of like confusion or just slightly anxiety provoking, or maybe worried or thinking, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on." And let's say if you decide, right, because you have a lot of different decisions, you could step away from your friends in the event. You could say, "Hey, I'm going to contact my family member." You could text them back in the moment, right, even though they didn't text you back, or you could just kind of let it be. Let's say you decide to let it be. So you decide to let it be. You're back in the moment with your friends at the event, but then 5 or so minutes later, you start to feel significant guilt. You're literally in the middle of an event with your friends that you planned out. You're having a great time. You're relaxed. You're in the zone. And then all of a sudden, this feeling of guilt, worry, anxiety just washes over you, right? And sometimes what happens is that in those moments, we might not necessarily know what it is that's causing the emotion. But because you know that you have been practicing implementing more boundaries with your family, right? Just putting some more pieces between you and them just to make sure that you're not always answering everything. Let's say you recognize, oh my gosh, I'm feeling guilty. And then a negative thought comes into mind. The negative thought that I came up with that I thought would be fitting for this example is this: I'm selfish because I'm not talking to them as much as I usually do. So, some of you may be familiar with the word selfish, and I think that the word selfish gets a negative rap, if you will. The word can mean a lot of different things, and a lot of times when people use it in reference to like an example like this, you know, considering themselves to be selfish creates guilt, which is basically when your actions don't line up to your values, okay, or your beliefs. And so, in an instance like this, right, it could be very easy to feel guilty and to feel selfish for not responding back to the individual, to the family member. But super important to remember that you actually, right, if we go factually speaking, you did respond back to the family member. They texted you and they said, hey, are you busy? And you texted them back and you said, hey, I'm not free right now. I'll be free in a couple of hours. You know, maybe you also wrote, let me know if that works for you, or, you know, some kind of something like that. And then they left you on red. At that point, right, you spoke your piece. You communicated effectively by letting them know, essentially, no, you're not available right this moment. And two, that you will be available at a certain time. And three, letting them know, hey, let me know if that works for you, right? And the reality is that when we can communicate verbally and also non-verbally too. So there are several different ways that either they could respond to you or you can respond. And so really essentially that first tip is to recognize the negative self-talk, which is that statement: I'm selfish because I'm not talking to them as much as I usually do, right? And so a lot of times when we have negative self-talk, it can kind of come in waves, or it can like flood our minds. Sometimes people may describe it as feeling overwhelmed. And really it does take practice to be able to break down each of those thoughts, because it is important to go through each of those thoughts, not necessarily at the same time, but it's important to recognize, especially if it's habitual, the negative self-talk statements that go into your that you experience regularly, right? So in various situations, you're noticing, oh wow, the thought of me being selfish comes into my mind a lot. And it's important to unpack that in a way that makes sense in reality and the here and now. The second tip is challenging the negative self talk statement. Okay. So, again, that self talk statement is, I'm selfish because I'm not talking to them, my family, as much as I usually do. And we know the example is that you're working on actively putting more boundaries in place so that you're not on call, right? Because you do have a life, you do have things planned and dreams and desires and goals and events that you want to do, and you deserve to do that as a person, right? But really we have to condition ourselves, we have to train ourselves to be able to do that, and really to be able to do that in a way that we feel good about with respect to our values and the people that we love and care about, and to ourselves. So in challenging the negative self-talk, it's important to pick a positive statement that actually fits with the actions that you are working on implementing, as well as addressing the negative statement. So here is the positive statement that I came up with. Okay. I'm getting better each day by learning how to put boundaries in place. Sometimes I don't have the energy or time to talk to, or help because of my schedule and commitments. Pretty straightforward, right? In this moment, we're taking emotion out of it, right? We're just looking at the factual information in that you are getting better each and every day, right? As long as you remember to incorporate some respect, right? Effective communication, keep it simple, right? You don't have to say everything under the sun. Just keep it simple for you, for them, for everybody. And then also to remember that you're not always going to have time and energy to talk to or to help people, especially family, because of your own schedule and your own commitments, right? Maybe you're in a romantic relationship and you and your partner have designated specific days to spend time together because both of your schedules are a little bit different, right? So your relationship with them is a priority. Not saying your relationship with your family is not a priority, but the reality in life, right, is that we have to restructure the people, places, and things that are a part of our life to make sure that we're prioritizing what we need to. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a right or a wrong. It's just really what works best, right? And that's just what it is. And then additionally, just remembering that you do have a life. You have a life and and you're allowed to talk about it. You're allowed to set goals for yourself. So just really important to challenge that automatic negative self-talk statement with something that is actually factual and realistic in real time. And the third tip is to give yourself grace each time. Each time you have an interaction where you're able to practice your boundaries, each time you have an interaction where you're able to challenge the negative self talk statement or statements, each time you're able to really recognize and make a clear, positive statement to challenge the negative self talk statement, you deserve to give yourself grace. You absolutely deserve to. Grace can allow you to practice thankfulness for the important lessons you learn in each of those situations and how those lessons can help you grow. Okay. It's so important. And the thing about life is that it's about playing the long game. It's chess, not checkers, right? It's about strategy. It is about open mindedness. It is about creativity. And it's about applauding yourself and celebrating yourself and recognizing that you are growing. You are getting better each day. You are getting better with each opportunity, right? And the reality is that sometimes we can get caught in the negative aspect of things. That's just a part of life. But one of the reasons why I wanted to share this video and why I'm sharing this series is because it's so important for us to literally retrain our brains, retrain our behaviors, retrain our actions, right? It takes time to get used to reframing how we think about things, where we place people in our life, right? Again, not saying that it's right or that it's wrong. Sometimes we just have to shift things around, and that's just what it is. And I wanted to just share too, as far as giving yourself grace, which really includes just giving yourself some breathing room, right? As you are restructuring, reconsidering how you're managing things or responding to people, communicating with others, and also communicating with yourself. That's why it's so important to be able to reframe and to challenge those negative self talk statements because before you're talking to anyone else, you're talking to you. Whether you recognize it or not, you are. You are talking to yourself. You're communicating with yourself, not in a weird way, but in a way where you are having a relationship with yourself first. And then you are able to have relationships with others, right? There's a concept I just wanted to share called latent conditioning. And I recently started reading the book Atomic Habits, which I'll put the link below for those of you that are interested in either reading the book or finding out more about it. But the author of the book talked about the concept of latent conditioning. And latent conditioning is basically when you are learning something. You're learning something new, right? And you're putting it into practice, which is where you're conditioning yourself, right? It's almost like if you're playing a sport, I'm thinking of maybe like Kobe, right? Rest in peace. For anyone that's familiar with him with regard to his sports career, he talked a lot about commitment he talked about conditioning, he talked about discipline, right? And the thing is, if we're talking about athletes, some of the athletes that are more of the better athletes, right, are the ones that are not just putting in work and doing drills and practicing and working out during the season. They are putting in work in the off season as well, which is conditioning. They are conditioning their bodies and their minds to stay ready. Now, with latent conditioning, something that's kind of interesting about that is that what you're doing is you are practicing, but when you're practicing, whatever it is that you're trying to, the goal is, it may not develop or manifest itself so clearly. It may be hidden or concealed. So, for example, as it relates to boundaries, doing boundary work is something that truly takes time to be able um, to experience the peace of it without letting the emotions take you over like a wave. Latent conditioning, I believe, can be applied to boundary work as one aspect of reframing your mind, right? Reframing the negative self-talk statements, because sometimes people can just throw in the towel. Oh, this isn't working. This is so hard. I'm not seeing any payoff. And that is where it's so important to keep your head in the game. Okay. You have to pick positive statements to reframe those negative statements. You have to stay in the game, because basically, statistically, the more that you do that, the higher the chances that you will actually begin to embody putting those boundaries into place, not just by saying it or by doing it, but by believing it and knowing that it's true for you, and knowing that you're not a bad person for having your own schedule, right? And that you care because you want to, in some way, reach out to them or touch base with them, right? Even if it's kind of for obligation's sake, but respectfully, right? Respectfully to them and respectfully to you. So, those are the three realistic and doable tips to challenge and to manage negative self-talk. And in the next video, I will be discussing what are core values and beliefs. Part of the reason why I would like to break down what are core values and beliefs is because in the very first video, part 1, which you could check out here, the definition of guilt that I shared is essentially when your actions don't match up to your values and to your beliefs. And so sometimes we may not even fully be aware of what our beliefs are. And if you are in a place where you recognize that there are instances where you're experiencing the feeling of guilt and you're like, well, but I should be allowed to spend time with my friends, right? I should be allowed to have my own schedule and to control it in the way that I want to, right? And again, it takes some of that deeper work to be able to figure out how to rewire and reframe what's causing us to feel the guilt, so we can be more connected and aligned with our values and our beliefs here and now. Again, respectfully, right? So with that said, definitely look out for my next video. And also in the meantime, take a look at the show notes, follow me on social media, listen to my podcast, Grow Through This, and contact me with any questions. Thank you for being here. Keep your head up and talk to you soon. Bye.